to how to bring your best self to an interview. So during the slides, I'm just going to give some tips. I'm focusing a lot on preparation. There's lots of tips out there about how to conduct yourself in an interview, but actually a lot of that is down to how you prepare for it. And there are a huge amount of things. I'm on my, can you hear me okay, Lucy?
Yeah, it's quite quiet.
Maybe take my AirPods off. 1 second. Can you hear me at all?
Try again.
Hello?
Yeah, that's better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, yeah, a lot of this is going to be about how you can prepare in the kind of weeks, days before the interview as well, just to give you a bit more confidence on the day. I'm going to start off with some statistics. I love a good statistic. So this is just to bring it to life a little bit about why this is all important. So lack of confidence during the interview is why 40% of interviewers don't take a candidate past the first stage, which I find quite a sad statistic because if you are prepared enough and you've had the right support leading up to your interview, you really want to go in there knowing that you've done all you can, and that will really affect your confidence on the day. So it just brings it home that sometimes it's not your ability to do the job, sometimes it's how you prepare and your confidence and your mindset on the day. 64% of people will research a company before applying for the position, which basically means over 30% of people don't research the company before they apply for a position. And so that's really, really important. If you don't know about the company before you walk into that interview, more often than not in an interview, you're going to be asked, what do you know about us? And if you don't have anything to say, it's very unlikely you're going to get past the first stage. 60% of employers are to keep video interviews after lockdown restrictions are lifted. So I'm going to be talking about things that you can do specifically to prepare for virtual interviews. And only 2% of candidates who apply for a job are selected to attend a job interview. So that just brings it home that if you are one of those lucky 2% who apply, make sure you maximize that opportunity. So, right. Oh, sorry, I've skipped ahead. So this is all about before the interview. So we call this your interview preparation toolkit. So there are 5 things that you've got that you can do before the day of the interview. So we're going to be going through how you can use the job description, how you can use the company values, how you can use your own network, how you can use the information you have about the company, and how you can prepare your own questions before the interview. So first of all, job descriptions. Anyone that knows me or who's been on any of these webinars before know that I'm not a massive fan of the traditional job description, but they exist. They are what they are. Let's try and use them as well as we possibly can. So your traditional job description should have a kind of 3 or 4 sections, and 3 of those sections will be the first bit, so kind of the purpose or the main description of the role, the main responsibilities, and then the experience that is needed in order to do the job. And so you can make sure, so first of all, make sure you properly read it. It's surprising how many people don't read end to end the job description. However kind of slightly dull or dry it might have been written, it's really important that you take time to, first of all, understand what they're saying. And so they might use some terminology that you're not familiar with. They might describe how something is done that might take a couple of goes to read it to work out what they actually mean. It's really important you take the time to understand what they're saying across all of the sections of the job description. The last thing you want to do is ask a question that's already been talked about in the job description. So it's not going to look great from your own preparation. Then kind of try and imagine how it's going to work. Kind of try and bring the words to life. Think about, you know, when they're talking about the main purpose and what the role is doing, try and really imagine it in your head, who you're going to be working with, what the typical scenarios day to day in your head will look like. Really try and do that work and talk about it with people. You know, there are lots of people probably around you that can support you in helping bring that to life. And then obviously relate it back to your own experience. So if there are certain things, especially in the responsibilities bit and the experience, if there's stuff there that perhaps where you don't fully tick that box, try and relate it back to something that you have done before. So if you're preempting that the interviewer might have concerns that you don't have experience in a certain thing, have something in your back pocket that goes, okay, I haven't done this, but what I have done is this, and actually I'm using a lot of the same skills. And you can get that from the job description. And then the obvious one, think of examples where you have actually done this stuff before. Anyone that's been in a number of interviews, and I'll go through different types of interviews later. Obviously, one of the most common types of interviews is competency or behavioural interviews, and that's where you're asked for examples of times when you've done certain things. So ensure that you look through the job description to ensure that you've kind of made those links back to your own experience. So that is tool number one, and that can take quite a long time, but it's really worth doing the work on that. So the second one is values, and some people forget about this. Like, we've got one client at the moment who we know in every single interview they will ask values-based questions, and so it's really important for us as consultants to ensure that our candidates know what the values are of that organisation. People's relationship with work has changed now. It's less about what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's to do with kind of what impact are you having. Do you believe in the purpose and mission of the organisation? You know, turning up to work and say you've got a really dull job to do, or, you know, a really boring task that you don't want to do. If you know why you're doing it, and you know what the ultimate mission of the business is, and you know the kind of what the results will be if you don't do that work, it really helps to kind of get you motivated. So the values are not just important for the business, they're important for you as well. So it's really important also that the values match what your values are. So again, really similar to the slide before, just ensure you understand them. Some of kind of the big tech companies or cool startups will have some pretty random values listed on their website. So make sure that you, again, truly understand what they mean when they say that. Obviously, imagine how it would work. So imagine how you'll do the job and kind of think of those values as you're doing it, and ensure that it's not just about what you do, but how you do it. And obviously relate it back to your own experience and think of examples where you've kind of worked by those values before. But the most important thing is just, you know, not a lot of people will even read the company values before going to a job interview. So if you take time to do that, you're probably ahead of some of the other candidates out there. But it's as much for your benefit as it is to the company to make sure that they match up. Oh, sorry, go back again. Your network. So lots of people think that, you know, if they are going to a job interview, they're there alone, but actually they're not. Everyone on this call will have a network, both professional and personal. So, you know, if in doubt, ask. So the first thing I would always do is kind of know who the interviewer is going to be, and see if you've got any mutual connections on LinkedIn. You might know someone that knows this individual, and just pick up the phone or drop them a message and go, I'm interviewing with Bob on Friday. What is he like? You know, should I be informal, formal? Does he dislike certain things? Is there anything particular I need to research that's really going to speak to him to this? You know, you can ask your mutual connections about that, just to be one step ahead. If you're going into a new industry, do you know anyone within that industry who you can talk to? Obviously, an obvious one is, do you know anyone that works for the company at the moment? Any conversations you have are going to be useful. And obviously, if you're being represented by a recruitment consultancy, use them. They know the business. They should be able to give you as much help as possible. I know that both myself and Lucy, anyway, we definitely try and give our candidates the most support as possible. So make sure that you use that. Your consultant should be doing that. Do your research. You heard that stat at the start that said, over 30% of people don't research the company. And, if you don't do that, then you're really setting yourself up to fail. So first thing, look on the company website. Obviously, you've looked at their values already. Look at how they describe what they do. There are some companies that it's really obvious what they do. If they're a retailer, you know what they sell. But there are some companies where it's less obvious. And so the more work you do to truly understand what they do as a business is really important. But there, as well as the website, there are two other things that you can do. So if you just Google the company name and then click on the news tab, if they're a large company, they'll have the most latest news articles, so you can keep current with what's going on with the business, and that will really impress the interviewer. So for example, say Vitality is one of our clients. Obviously, they're a big company, they're always doing a lot, so it's really good for our candidates to be looking at the news about the organization. And obviously social media is increasingly becoming, every business really will obviously have a LinkedIn profile, but a lot of them will be on Instagram now as well. And Instagram's really, it's heavily used for organizations that recruit a lot of people. And some companies will even have like a careers specific Instagram account. So Carnival, for example, who are a local company here, they've got their own Carnival Careers Instagram. So you can go on there, you can see what it's like to work there, and it might as well give you an understanding of the kind of the environment and the culture. So that's a really useful thing to do. And finally, questions. So this is the bit some people forget, and again, it's a real pet peeve of some hiring managers and recruiters where a candidate doesn't have any questions that they're going to ask the company. So the reason why it's important to have, I would always suggest have 10 to 15 questions prepared. And the reason I say that many is because you'll write 10 to 15, and then half of them may actually be answered throughout the interview. So what you don't want to do is ask a question that has already been answered. The reason why it's important, it shows your genuine interest in the job. It shows that you're prepared, and it shows that it helps the employer understand your motivations for joining, depending on what questions you ask. I'd always suggest asking open questions. So those are questions that can't be answered with a yes, a no, or a maybe. They are questions that involve someone talking properly. So, questions like, how would you describe the culture of the organization? What do you like about working here? What do you expect the 6 months of the job to look like? They are questions that will really get people talking. And so what you want to make, this is their opportunity to talk, and people enjoy that. They like talking about themselves and talking about where they work. So that will, they'll enjoy you asking those questions. And ask genuine questions. This might sound really obvious, but don't ask questions just because you think you should. Ask questions that you genuinely want the answer to. This is your opportunity to get information. So it's not just to impress them. It's your opportunity to get the information you want out the job. And it's going to be quite obvious if you're asking questions just because it is a standard one. And this is, might sound obvious, but don't ask questions like, how long is the lunch break? How many days annual leave do I have? It's just not going to give them the right impression of why you want to work there. So you can easily find out that stuff without asking it in an interview. So those are your preparation tools. There's a lot there, but it's worth doing the work. And then once you've done it with one company, if you're actively on the market and you've got lots of interviews going on, once you've done it with one company, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. But there's lots of stuff out there that's going to mean that you're going to go into that interview armed with so much information, and it's genuinely going to set you apart from those candidates that aren't going to do that. So that is before. So obviously I will say around kind of on the day, and there's some tips about kind of on, you know, how you conduct yourself in the actual interview. But obviously there's two types of interviews now, in person and virtual. And so lots of companies are doing a bit of a hybrid actually. So they might do, you know, if you are local to the organisation, they might do the first one virtually and then they might do a face-to-face, or they might do it all virtually. But it's worth, you know, knowing that the two are different, and it's the preparation you have to do for both of those are quite different. So in person, these are all pretty obvious ones, but kind of, you know, on time is late. If your interview's at 9:30 and you turn up at 9:30, you're late. So the golden rule is 5 to 10 minutes before the interview starts, you walk in the building. You might be sitting in your car for half an hour beforehand, that's absolutely fine. Turning up, you know, 15 minutes before is too early. The person interviewing you is probably a very busy person. They don't want the stress of knowing that you're waiting. So if your interview's at 9:30, walk into reception between 20 and 9:25. It's okay to turn up way before, just don't go into the building. Look your best, but be comfortable. And so some people might be wanting to, so you want to look really smart, but especially any ladies watching, you don't want to kind of be wearing a dress that when you're walking around and standing up is fine, and then you sit down and actually it rises up and it's quite short and you feel uncomfortable. You want to make sure that standing, sitting and walking, you are comfortable in what you're wearing. Because if you go into the office, you might be given a tour around the office, there might be loads of stairs, so you don't want shoes that you can't walk in. This might sound like silly stuff, but it can really make a difference on the day to your mindset and how you're feeling about yourself. So make sure kind of you try on your outfit before, maybe the day before, and you know, test it, go for a walk, sit down, stand up, check it's a good outfit and it looks smart in all circumstances. Food and drink, obviously it depends on the time of day, but you know, it might be tempting to drink a lot of coffee, but you're not going to need that much caffeine. You're going to be nervous. It is an interview. You're going to have adrenaline rushing through you. You'll probably be fine on 1 cup of coffee. So try and not have too many. And similar with sugar, you don't want too much caffeine and sugar before you go into that kind of environment. And yeah, drink plenty of water, eat light food, nothing too heavy. Again, it might sound like it's completely unrelated what you consume, but actually what you eat does affect how you feel. So ensure that you're sensible and you really think about that. And then deep breaths, fresh air, unless it's absolutely pouring down with rain, it's always worth just going for a little walk. You know, if you do turn up early, go for a little wander, take some deep breaths. You know, meditation is becoming a really normal thing for people to do to kind of center themselves. So, you know, don't be worried about doing that. Do whatever you need to do to keep yourself focused. From a virtual perspective, test the technology. I had an interview last week where the guy couldn't get on Teams and he didn't even let me know. He just didn't turn up to the interview. So test the technology the day before. If there are problems, tell the organisation, tell your recruitment consultant. Don't just wait there without anything working. Technology is brilliant when it works. When it doesn't, it's not very good. So make sure you test it, make sure you're completely comfortable with it. The camera, we actually have a slide dedicated to that on the next slide. Make sure everything's on Do Not Disturb. So for this webinar, I've turned my phone off, I've turned my emails off, I've put Teams on Do Not Disturb. So I know I'm not going to get distracted. And here we go, sit still. I don't know if I have been sitting still. So you can all let me know whether or not I've been kind of doing this. I do tend to do that, so apologies. But don't do as I do as I say in that instance. So camera. So again, like I'm looking over here because my presentation is here, but actually my camera is there. Eye contact is really important. And so you need to talk to the camera, not to the person, but it's really awkward if the camera is here and the person's over there. So if you can, and there are ways to do this, put the camera in front of the screen. So you can buy really cheap tripods on Amazon, really small ones. You can even just get a pile of books and put it in front of it. But if you make sure the camera is in front of the screen, so when you're looking at the person, you're also looking at the camera, it's going to be a lot nicer for you, and it's going to be a lot nicer for them. And so it might sound like a bit of a weird thing to say, and we're still quite new to all of this, talking on Teams and Zoom, etc. But it is a really good thing to do. Head and shoulders in the frame, so we don't want to see just here, or we don't want to be looking up your nose. You know, make sure your seat is the right height, and then check the lighting is right. So what I'd always suggest, if you're especially at the moment when it gets our seasons change in terms of when there's sun streaming into your room, is going to change quite regularly. So you want to ideally, if your interview is at 3 o'clock on the Tuesday, at 3 o'clock on the Monday, test your lighting in where you're going to have this interview. You want to make sure that on the day you don't suddenly halfway through the interview get a load of light where you can't see the screen. You don't suddenly want to be in the dark. You want to make sure that throughout the hour of the interview, which is generally how long it's going to take, you are constantly lit up in the best way. And obviously you can get ring lights as well, which help. But as we know, Lucy, I'm wearing my contacts today. Ring lights aren't great when you wear glasses, because you've got your glasses and then you've just got like the ring light. So yeah, that's kind of, if you don't wear glasses, that's great. Or if you can wear contacts, but I wouldn't recommend having a ring light and wearing glasses. And again, do not disturb. So, if you're at, if you're at your desk, make sure that you do not disturb virtually, but also do not disturb physically as well. So, anyone that joined our first webinar will remember my cat. It's not ideal in an interview situation. I think maybe you can get away with it in a webinar, I hope. But yeah, no pets. Sometimes kids will walk in, it is what it is, but if you can try your best to not be disturbed during the interview, that is advisable. And the actual interview itself. So silence is okay. Once you have answered the question that they asked you, stop talking, or say to them, how do you think that would work in this organization? Or, have I covered everything? Some people find it really hard. Some people hate silence. And so they just carry on talking. And that's really dangerous, because the filter gets a bit tired. And so you just want to make sure that once you've answered the question, you hand it back to them. Either just stop talking, it's totally fine to do that, or ask them, what did you think, or do you think that would work? It's okay for there to be silence whilst they think about what you've said. Keep it really positive. Again, this might sound obvious, but it's to do with your language. So we had some interviews a few weeks ago for a really senior sales role, and the company that I was recruiting for have massive growth plans. They're a £2 million business at the moment, and they want to be a £10 million business in 2 years' time. So it's big ambition, but they are confident they can do it with the right people. Some of the people that interviewed for that role described that as a great opportunity. Others described it as a massive challenge. I think someone even said the word problem. You don't want to be that person. You can be talking about something in exactly the same way, but just because of the language you use, unless if you make it sound like a negative, they are thinking, do you really want this? Are you going to come in here and motivate people in the right way if you're already describing this as a massive challenge or a problem? So ensure that you are keeping positive. Every role is going to have challenges. Every role is going to be hard in a certain way. But in that interview scenario, you want to be Mr. or Mrs. Positivity. No one wants to hire that person that looks for an excuse why something can't happen. You want people who will do all they can to deliver. So keep it positive. Be authentic. don't answer a question just in a way that you think they want you to. You need to be yourself. And so, you know, what you don't want to do is go in there and be someone else, get the job, and then it doesn't work out. If you go in there and you are the best version of yourself, which is what this webinar is all about, and you don't get the job, it wasn't the job for you. So be authentic, which is kind of linked to the next one. So have integrity. It's a really fine balance between integrity and flexibility. You don't want to be a complete stick in the mud and go, I'm just going to do it like this. But you want, if you truly believe in something, don't change your mind just because someone else doesn't like it. They want to see that you've got some substance behind you. But be open to other people's opinions. Keep it conversational. You know, similar to how I was saying about it being okay to have silence. You know, after you've been talking for a while, hand it back to them and go, you know, how do you think that would work? Do you have any issues with this? Just get the conversation flowing and read the room. You know, we've all experienced very different interviewers over the years. Some people are really informal and will want a chat and just want to get to know you. Others will be super professional. Other people don't like interviewing. Some people who end up interviewing candidates don't enjoy it, so they might be a bit awkward. So, you know, read the room. If someone is being very professional and very formal, don't be very informal with them. Try and kind of match their level. So that's kind of the actual interview tips. And just finally, just want to go through some different types of interviews, because obviously that will depend on how you prepare and how you conduct yourself on the day. So the most common one is competency or behavioural. So this is when you're asked for real life examples of how you've achieved or experienced certain things in the past career. So this is where you want to really identify, you know, 2 or 3 examples for each of the different things that you're going to be doing in the role. My personal favourite is strengths-based recruitment. So this is actually when you're being asked questions that probe, you know, your true passions and motivations and your potential. So this will be like trying to identify if you are, you know, where you are kind of on the introvert extrovert spectrum. You know, there's no right or wrong there. Some people prefer their own company. Other people need to be around people all the time. Some people are really good getting their head down working on a project for 3 months. Others need stuff going on. Others like to pivot. Some people like, you know, going down the straight and narrow. So that's about looking at what people really want and how they work and where they're going to be happiest ultimately at the end of the day. And then something that probably no one wants to experience is a stress interview. So I've had one of these before and it was really not a very nice experience, but there are some roles that due to the nature of them, companies do need to see how you are under pressure. And so at some point during the interview, you might be asked, you know, how do you think this interview is going? No one wants to answer that during an interview, but some people are tested on it. So if you know, if anyone mentions the word stress interview to you whilst you're in the process for a vacancy, that's the way that you can just prepare yourself that stuff like that might happen during it. So that is it. Bang on half an hour. So that's what I said was going to happen, which is good. So I hope all that was useful, everyone. Do we have any questions?